So, World of Warcraft. The MMO that time and time again I drop saying, I'm never playing this piece of garbage again. Only to pick it up again a couple of years later. Almost on a regular basis. But something's different this most recent time I decided to come back and traverse Azeroth and its new Dragon Isles. It actually feels fun. Like normally I'd start playing World of Warcraft again as kind of a time waster, not really trying to accomplish anything, but this time around it's different. I actually want to do stuff. I want to progress and do some Mythic Plus or raids or something. It's a lot different than it used to be for me. As a bit of setup to the current state of WoW, let's just remind ourselves that WoW had one of, if not its best expansion yet in the eyes of its player base with Legion. Classes felt fun, the story wasn't too aggressively bad that it angered people, and things were relatively simple with the latest spice added in the mix being artifacts, a welcome change from the garrisons of the previous expansion. But then the honeymoon was over. Blizzard released what could be regarded as its worst expansion yet, and may still be the worst expansion to some. Battle for Azeroth.
Burn it!
Where some classes felt okay-ish, the content and zones felt more boring and uninspired than ever before, the story was so aggressively bad and fan-fiction-y, if that's even a word, that it bothered everyone. And not only that, but they took away some of the most fun and rewarding gear in the game for the sake of this new Azerite armor that no one asked for or cared about from day one. And then the divorce was over. Blizzard had to release the worst of the worst, right? They couldn't possibly go further down the pit considering what we'd all been through at this point. Blizzard knew what they did wrong, now it's time to fix it and do what the players wanted. And then Shadowlands released.
Burn it!
With an even worse story with the original character Do Not Steal. Even worse zones that really hammered home the story that didn't really try to connect you to these covenants that you were supposed to side with for the rest of the expansion. Even more borrowed power that no one asked for. And Blizzard's stubbornness with choices being meaningful. So here we are. We'd gone through the honeymoon with Legion, the divorce with Battle for Azeroth, and the absolute dumpster fire of Shadowlands. Needless to say, players weren't happy, and Blizzard already had plenty of other things to be worried about outside of yet another WoW expansion being bad. So the stakes were high. If things went wrong here, a lot of WoW's longtime player base was probably going to jump ship to other MMOs or just other games in general. In fact, some people already were at this point. But luckily for Blizzard and us, honestly, Dragonflight at the very least is much better than the last two expansions. Classes feel good again, with your own agency on how you play them. The story is simple yet effective, making you care for characters when they want you to, and letting you engross yourself in the world of dragons and explore all the secrets the Isles have to offer at your own pace. The new race and class combo were a hit, with some interesting implications for the potential future of classes in WoW in general. And finally, a complete overhaul of professions in an attempt to make them relevant and interesting without going the route of Final Fantasy XIV, but taking their own spin on things that, sure, may not be perfect, but it's so much better than before, where professions were all but useless. So let's jump right into it. I spent long enough dancing around the topics and making bad jokes. On with the content. And more bad jokes. So World of Warcraft and its classes have had a hard time really making the player feel like they're playing a wielder of light sent to purge all evil, or a calm and patient monk with the ability to turn all the patients into pain for you at a moment's notice. Usually the only classes that didn't suffer from some kind of identity crisis in the last few expansions were Worgen and Goldshire on Moonguard. The classiest dogs around, I assure you. But in Dragonflight, large strides have been made to make this even better for every class. It is not perfect, but it feels so much better than it has for years now. There's new talent trees, where before you get a talent every 15 levels or so, getting one choice between something that gives you a new ability that you'll never use, a buff from an ability that almost never comes into play, and making your biggest damage dealing ability deal even more damage. Real hard decisions coming out of those talents. Now the talents are split up between your class overall, and the specific specialization that you're playing, and you get a new talent point every level past level 10. And these talents aren't always crazy powerful changes to your class that you use all the time, but that's okay, because you're probably not that worried about it. It's okay if at this level all you got was a talent that gave you some extra auto attack speed, because next level you might get something that lets you throw axes every now and then when you auto attack. Suddenly that last talent doesn't seem so bad. Or maybe you're about to unlock some new talent that's a core part of your rotation later on. This new system really allows you to build the class how you want in a way, where if you're not optimal in every single sense of the word, it's okay. Out of the nearly 100 different talent choices, it's not going to make such a huge difference that it's impossible to play well. Not only is it inconsequential enough to where it won't heavily impact your content clearing experience, but it's also just relevant enough that the player feels it, making this nice little niche where the player can enjoy their talents without feeling like they're forced into certain choices. Even if they are optimal choices technically, it's much less likely that it'll have a heavy impact on your experience. A perfect example of this is that Fury Warrior has two different talent builds that are completely separate from one another, one of which being anger management themed, and one of which being Annihilator themed, where Annihilator is a lot more auto attacking, and it replaces a raging blow with auto attacks instead. with anger management being a more traditional Fury Warrior build where you use Raging Blow and Rampage a lot, but your auto attacks aren't as impactful. And these both have their pros and cons, where they're worse than the other at something and better at them at something else. And these are both in the same exact specialization and class. But all of that doesn't really matter if the questing or dungeons aren't satisfying or interesting to you as you play. Which thankfully I feel is in a much better place than the dialogue-ridden hellscapes of Shadowlands. Where even choosing to go back there for leveling means sitting around for upwards of 10 minutes just listening to characters talk to each other and not being able to walk away because you have to talk to them to continue the dialogue. And then they're talking about the nonsense about the death realm and how you're so special because you showed up here and how you're the only one who can dare walk into the mall with your special power champion. It's all up to you. But Dragonflight's content and story isn't really like that. Dragonflight must have realized how annoying and boring Shadowlands and other previous expansions' story and questing was because it's done a complete 180 compared to those expansions. Now, instead of a 10-minute introduction to the hub where you would have to individually talk to each random NPC that serves the same function that you served for over a decade, they just drop you off on the Waking Shore, give you a quest to kill some lizards, and you go on your way. You can, if you want to, get engrossed in the story happening around you, learning the harsh realities of life as a dragon over the past few years, not being able to go home and losing loved ones through the war with the corrupted Black Dragonflight, whether it be to them or them being corrupted themselves. Or you can just turn your brain off and hit big lizards until you hit 70, and then hit bigger lizards. Once you get through the main storyline on one character, you're also able to spread out to whatever zone you want. So whatever area you enjoyed your first go around, you can just replay that part rather than go back to the Centaur fuckland and sit on a dog for 15 minutes like we all did the first time we did the quest there. Not to mention that through your entire leveling journey and onwards in the Dragon Isles, you'll be dragon riding, which is such a simple and fun way to spice up the basic movement from point A to point B. It makes it so much easier to keep yourself going throughout the zone, even if it is just shamelessly ripped off from Guild Wars 2. Seriously though, this new form of flight adds so much to the expansion in its own mechanics, the races, the ability to customize dragons to get your liking, to make your dragon truly feel like your own, and even just being a different system that simply pointing your character in the direction of where you need to be, going AFK to go to the bathroom or something, and spending too long away and you die because you went too far away and died of fatigue. And now you have to do the same thing, but in reverse. Along with this new story and zones, they also got a brand new race to go along with it. And although they're only limited to one class for now, there's a brand new class that's made to complement the race to where your entire skill set feels natural and on brand for your brand new Dragthier. Dragthiers can only be Evokers as of right now, with Evokers having 3 specs to choose from, with one being newly released at the time of writing the script. You have Devastation Evokers, your textbook damaging caster with some new twists to them. You have a healing spec with Preservation with a lot of movement compared to other healers, both for yourself and your party members, potentially getting them out of a bad spot. And the newest kit on the block with Augmentation Evokers, with new perspective on DPS, at least for a while. Instead of the normal DPS mindset of hit the boss with your optimal rotation and deal as much damage yourself as possible, Augmentation is meant to make everyone around them look that much better. Boosts their primary stats, increases their damage mitigation, and allowing healers and other casters to cast while moving and have more range. While Evoker may not have a tanking spec, they cover a wide range of different playstyles and preferences across their potential player base, and open the door for DPS specs designed around bolstering those around them more commonly. Now, this new class comes at a great time for WoW because the amount of new content and places to take your Evoker across Dragon Isles is astonishing. Not only do the staples of weekly quests, the Vault from Shadowlands, World quests, and all that good stuff come back around this expansion, there's also brand new content like the Farok camps, where you go and kill minions of Farok and loot his metal and keys for some strong catch-up gear for any of your classes. And if you happen to be around when he gets pissed off enough at you doing this, he'll fly through the zone he's in and squash you like a bug, laugh at you, and then give you an achievement referencing a feat of strength you can get back in Cataclysm where Deathwing would do the same thing. But you also have the more recent Time Rifts, a chaotic event that happens at the start of every hour where you fight against enemies from all kinds of different parallel universes. Universes like What If the Alliance and Horde never were peaceful, with a war-torn veteran Varian Rin, or a universe where the old gods never got dealt with and control all of Azeroth, or even a parallel universe where everyone's a Murloc, fit with all sorts of varying fish puns for all your favorite characters. These are always complete mayhem, with different objectives ranging from simple stuff like killing this type of enemy for a little while, to filling an hourglass of sand, to playing Spot the Difference where you have 3 normal looking animals and then there's just a giant demon in the middle of all of them. And in this next patch coming up, we're supposed to get something similar to Legion Invasions from, well, Legion, called Dream Searches. Yeah, so about that. Dream Searches already came out because I took too long to make this video because I'm a lazy piece of shit. So I'm just gonna sort of go over them real quick and then we can get back to the actual video. So Dream Searches are actually a little bit better than Legion Invasions in my opinion, just because instead of it being like a little thing that you do once a week and then it's one and done, good to go, now it's every 30 minutes a different buff will go across the entire zone that the Dream Search is in. And every 30 minutes there will also be a little event that happens where you go and kill some dudes, get some free shit, call it a day. It's pretty cool. And then there's all kinds of those different buffs, like getting more experience. There's stuff like every person that's near you get a buff to your damage and movement speed and all that stuff. It's really nice. Honestly, it's a big change from all the other content. It keeps things interesting and fresh. Because it might be completely different buffs in different zones. I don't know. This is the first week it's been out. It's only in Waking Shores right now. But very cool. I'm excited to see what comes next. But now back to past me, I guess, if we have to. So enjoy, I guess. And with all this new content, there's one last major change that's been made to really spice up every action you take across the Dragon Isles. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, professions are finally not dog shit. With a complete overhaul to the way professions work, not only are you able to make gear that competes with the best in slot gear if you invest enough time into it, but it's also not completely boring and brain dead to the point that you don't want to bother with it. There's a whole set of stats and gear associated with crafting now that maybe I'll talk about more in a future video. But all you need to know is there's stats for both your gathering professions and crafting professions that all affect how well you do said action. Someone who just picked up mining, for example, might get 1 or 2 normal draconium from a node they mine. Meanwhile, someone decked out in good mining gear and a lot of skill in the professions might get upward to 6 to 7 draconium that's higher quality, resulting in better crafts, or higher sale value. And even some extra ores and resources on top of that, potentially. And crafting is the same, with a beginner making a piece that's good, but not much else to it, while the person who's been doing it for a while will make an objectively better piece with higher stats. It won't cost them as many resources, and they can even add extra modifiers or stats on it to make it even better in some form or another. Honestly, it's such a breath of fresh air to have professions be useful to players of all skill levels, and it's not just being a reskin of Final Fantasy XIV's crafting and gathering system, or even classic WoW system. Retail really made this system their own, and it feels great. The system really rewards anyone who even slightly gets into it. You don't have to go super hard into it and learn every single in and out, learning what best to put knowledge points and maximize efficiency, learning the best farming spots and best pieces of gear to make with different qualities. But you can go that route, and you will be rewarded heavily for it if you decide to do so. And to take that idea a step forward in a different direction, there's also a system from Shadowlands that makes its return this expansion, and that's the Revival Catalyst, where you're able to spend a special currency to turn a piece of gear from certain types of content into tier pieces, changing what stats they give, their appearance, and most importantly, allowing you to get your tier set bonus, which means that almost any player can get their full tier set bonus without having to step foot in a raid if they don't want to. And while this doesn't change much of anything for the mythic tier raiders who are bashing Sarkareth's skull in as we speak, this does mean that people who may not feel comfortable in raids, even at the LFR level, have a chance to try out these game-changing bonuses to the class. Honestly, it's a small change to add something like this, but it's so meaningful and impactful for players on the more casual end of the player base, and really gives them something to look forward to just the same as a raider. Maybe even make them want to push to higher heights, which is what an MMO should always strive to do. Ultimately, I think that Dragonflight is a huge step in the right direction for World of Warcraft, and it's shaping up to be one of its best expansions to date. Honestly, there are flaws here and there that I didn't really talk about in this video, but they aren't major enough to drag down all the good things this expansion has done. And it really feels like Blizzard is focusing more on making a fun and fulfilling experience for all players as opposed to locking them into choices they didn't fully understand at the time. Giving players power they knew they wouldn't keep by the end of the expansion, souring the whole experience, and in general, assuming the player base doesn't know what they want. I think Dragonflight marks a turning of the tide for World of Warcraft expansions, with hopefully more wonderful experiences coming down the pipeline with more patches, and hopefully expansions to come. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Hope you enjoyed this video. I'd love to hear your experiences with Dragonflight or your thoughts on the expansion in general in the comments. You're awesome, take care of yourself, and make sure to clean your grape soda before you eat it. Goodbye.